Hello everyone, Hyper here, and welcome to my first video in the Hyperview series. Now, if you see any videos in my channel titled Hyperview, these will be short discussion videos anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes where I talk about my thoughts on different topics within Warcraft. These will not be specifically DK related, but they will be mostly Warcraft related, and depending on if you guys like these types of videos, I might broaden the topics to Blizzard games or other games I'm playing and I'm interested in. But in today's video, I will be talking about the Netherlight Crucible and the Kil'jaeden nerfs. One kind of ties into the other, so I'm just going to start off with the Netherlight Crucible. So this system was basically meant to keep AP relevant, right? Going into Tomb of Sargeras, most people maxed out their weapon, they got Concordance in their weapon, no one maxed it out. And after you got Concordance, you pretty much lost all motivation to farm AP. So this meant Mythic Pluses, World Quests, and basically everything that rewards AP. Now you still did your weekly plus 10 or plus 15 for that gear, but you never really ran something for AP unless you were farming it for off-spec or something like that. And going into next year, Blizzard had to keep AP relevant somehow, which is why they introduced the Netherlight Crucible, which increases the relevancy of AP up to level 75, I believe, is where you unlock the last trait. I agree with the situation where, AP is the most repeatable content in the game. Whatever you do, you're going to get some AP, which incentivizes you to do that content. And keeping AP relevant is crucial to keeping players playing your game. Now, looking on forums, on Twitter, and, talking with a few people, I've gotten mostly negative feedback about the Netherlight Crucible, and I tend to agree on most things. However, there are a few benefits to the Netherlight Crucible, which I will just go over shortly. But anyway, here's my thoughts on the Netherlight Crucible. So the first tier, the 15 item level weapon boost, I think is awesome. Zero RNG involved, everyone who does the quest receives it, and you just get a flat damage increase. Now through this, it means that all other content that you're doing, that may be world quests or LFR or raiding, mythic plus dungeons, any content you're doing will be indirectly nerfed by this because your character is stronger. And everyone will get this, so going into the next patch, everyone's characters will be stronger. And I completely agree with this. In the past, they either just nerfed raids slightly before a new patch coming out, or they implemented some kind of system to increase your character power. At the end of WoD, we saw the system where you could upgrade all your items by 10 item levels, and that indirectly nerfed every other content you were doing. This is kind of the same idea here. Now for the tier 2, this is kind of where my concerns about the Netherlight Crucible come in, and my frustrations with it. So especially for a class who greatly benefits from mastery, we have very defined traits that are really good for our class, and then ones that just aren't that good for us. And for me as a Death Knight, for Unholy, my best trait, which is about 1.7-1.8% damage increase in tier 2, versus the worst trait, which is a 0.7% damage increase. These are for the damaged ones. That's quite a big difference. If none of my 3 relics rolled the best trait, I might be losing out on 1% damage on each relic, which overall is 3%, and that's huge. Now obviously that is the worst case scenario and will most likely not happen. But still, losing out on 2% damage, 2.5% damage, which very well might happen if you're a raider, is kind of a big deal if you think about it. Over the course of a fight, 2%, 3% is quite a bit of damage. And when you're competing for the top 1%, top 0.1%, whatever you're going for, even if you're just competing within your guild with other DPS, that little edge, might be the difference. Especially as a Mythic Raider, it's kind of frustrating whenever you don't get the right traits. I definitely agree with the idea that Blizzard made a few different traits here, right? So to make it more dynamic, But the fact that the traits roll whenever you open the relic is, in my opinion, kind of a bad design, because you never know if you got an upgrade or not. You go into the raid, um, let's say you have a 930 item level relic from Kil'jaeden. You go in the same raid, you get the 930 item level relic drops again, right? Most up until now, we didn't even think about rolling for that. We already have it, nothing to worry about. Now you have to roll on this, potentially get it, and then take it to the Netherlight Crucible, open it up, and see what you got. And it's, you know, this RNG box that keeps on giving. You keep opening it, hoping for the best until you get it. And there's quite a few traits, because if you think about it, you have to get the ideal tier 2 trait, which leads into an ideal tier 3 trait. And that's kind of a small chance. Out of my 3 relics that I have coming into 7.3, none of them rolled ideal traits in tier 2 that led into ideal traits for tier 3. And I feel like most people are in that situation. You might have one relic that did it, but having the best trait in the second row and the third row, that's going to be kind of a small percent of the time which that happens. So for raid leaders and raiding in general, this will be a nightmare. My guild is going to be doing split runs next raid, and you know, getting a relic, you don't know if it's an upgrade potentially until you open it at the Netherlight Crucible. Another thing is, if your weapon does not have enough traits, for example, my weapon is at 64 right now, and I need 69 to unlock the third tier 2, and I need 75 to unlock all the tier 3s. But I'm left with this choice where in tier 2, I can either take a good trait or a bad trait. If I take the good trait, that's going to lead me into a defensive tier 3. So I will get that short-term increase in damage, but if I wait until my weapon is at 75, potentially, I can take the less beneficial tier 2 trait, which leads into a better row 3 trait. And this is kind of a dilemma, because this is exactly the situation I ran into. In tier 3, they implemented the defensive traits. So initially, they said that your relics could not roll defensive traits. So for me as a Death Knight, that's the AMS one, increases my AMS, and reduces the AoE damage I take. Those are the 2 defensive traits that I can roll potentially. And one of my relics rolled both of them, and then rolled a really bad third trait. So you can see how this system is completely RNG. And in Legion, we've seen this over and over again, where you just need to pull the lever and hope you get the best. This is my only frustration with the system. Obviously, it's a great damage boost. If everything works out perfectly, this is a huge buff to everyone. If it doesn't work out perfectly, it's just a slight buff. And the difference, again, between the lucky players and the unlucky players will be pretty significant at the top level. And this leads into the Kil'jaeden nerfs. So if you didn't see it, they nerfed his health by 5%. They changed Armageddon up slightly, where before the Armageddons would spawn like on the very edges of the room sometimes. They kind of limited that and moved all the Armageddons closer to the center rather than being spread out on the corners. They also reduced the radius of bursting Dread Flame, which I completely agree with, and they also reduced the Chaotic Eruption, which is the mythic mechanic. Whenever the ad spawns, whoever got the ad, when the ad dies, will start shooting out these little flame orbs, and you just gotta kite them around, or kite until the debuff falls off. And if you got hit by a flame orb, you got shot up, and the raid took AoE damage, which usually killed the raid. Now with our gear level, we noticed that if we got hit once, if we had Vantage Runes, we survived even pre-nerf. So post-nerf, this will eliminate a lot of the wipes. We have about 450-ish pulls in Kil'jaeden at this point, and out of those, a very significant number of wipes were to getting hit by the Chaotic Eruption and the knockup. Now these nerfs are interesting because Kil'jaeden didn't really have a DPS problem. So the 5% health nerf, I think, is just to kind of help out guilds that are getting close or are struggling slightly with some push timers. but my guild has a really high overall DPS, so we were meeting all those DPS checks. The difficulty of the fight came from the mechanics and the instantaneous communication you kind of have to soak all the Armageddons while spreading out with circles, and these crazy mechanic overlaps, which I can't even imagine how other guilds killed it before the initial nerfs. So it's really interesting how they decided to nerf this fight, because they already nerfed phase 3 once in the last round of nerfs, so they didn't touch it this time. It's kind of known, if you're progressing Kil'jaeden, you kind of known that phase 3 is kind of like the easiest phase to progress. It's kind of a rinse and repeat phase. If a few players who are kiting the orbs are very good at it and can do their jobs, the rest of the raid has kind of an easy time, and progressing that phase will probably take the least amount of pulls. Getting to that phase, however, is incredibly difficult, because phase 2 is when the second DPS adds spawn, and before the nerfs you had to potion and pop all your cooldowns and try to deal with them, and that was a big barrier, especially for my guild. We spent probably around 200 pulls from the first time we got to those ads until we got past them, and we only got past them after they actually nerfed their health along with the boss's health. Now this also switches up some of the timings, and yesterday, which was the first day when the nerfs were introduced in NA and my guild raided, we actually extended the lockout, but I missed the first 3 hours of raid, and I was in for the last 30 minutes-ish. And a lot of the timings were incredibly different. These nerfs changed up a lot of the mechanics and how you deal with the fight. It also opened up a lot of new strategies that guilds can use. For example, the initial guilds, everyone 2-tanked it because there was that huge DPS check on the ads and huge DPS check to push the first phase at an ideal time or kill the ad for the dispel to grip everyone to the tank. With these nerfs coming in, you can actually 3-tank it pretty successfully, which is what my guild is doing, and still make those DPS checks. Now, our guild was stuck at about 52-53%-ish, which is where the second DPS ads spawn with the orbs. And after the nerfs, they pushed it down to 11%, I believe was the best try so far, in one day. So typically, before this, guilds would progress, right, the second phase, then kind of the 2.5, phase 2.5, which is the shadow phase. And then you would progress phase 3. But if you run 3 tanks, you just use 1 blood decay and you basically negate the second transition phase, because you can just mass grip the ads and nuke them down if you have all your DPS alive, which prevents all of those kind of RNG things from happening, where you might get knocked into the wrong place and potentially when you start the last phase you just kind of die to the AoE. And yeah, these Kil'jaeden nerfs are actually huge. 4 guilds killed it the day of the nerf. This will also make farm easier. I don't know if you guys keep up with the kind of raiding scene, but a lot of the top guilds killed the boss and then never killed it again, while other top guilds maybe did a few pulls and saw that it's not worth the potentially 700-800 wipes that they're gonna have to face just to kill this boss. Because of Titan Forges and War Forges and Mythic Caches, you can potentially get the same gear out of Heroic or farming the first 8 Mythic bosses, which is considerably easier than doing Kil'jaeden. And a lot of the rekills were taking 50 to 100 pulls for guilds that have, previously killed it, which is just insane. And these nerfs will make it a lot easier for those guilds to go back, get some gear, and not spend 4, 5, 6 hours a week just in there trying to kill Kil'jaeden for the 5th time, because 1 or 2 people might need an upgrade from him. So yeah, overall, I'm happy with the Kil'jaeden nerfs, and hopefully my guild kills it this week. And the Netherlight Crucible, I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. I've seen a lot of really negative comments, a lot of comments that say it will be better for the casual player base, which I completely agree with. But if you're a casual player or you're a Heroic Raider, Mythic Raider, whatever. I'd love to hear what you think about the Netherlight Crucible, how it impacted your character, and how you see it going forward into the next patch. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. If you'd like to see me stream live, go to twitch.tv/Hyperion29 and make sure to follow to get a notification when I go live. And underneath the stream, I have my general stream schedule, which might vary slightly, but I usually post about that on Twitter if it does. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.